My name is Sophie Taylor-Barthorpe and I specialise in our university placements. I'm well versed in placing international and UK students for bachelor and master's degrees at UK universities, including Oxbridge. For over 10 years, Simply Learning Tuition Consultancy has supported hundreds of students in preparing for competitive British universities, from choices, personal statements, preparation for interviews, and entrance examinations to supporting students with the whole application process. If we could have the next slide, please, Ellen. So we'll start by talking you through the basics. As I just mentioned, the deadlines for the following academic year start are the 15th of October and then the 15th of January, and all of them are submitted via a centralised application service called UCAS, which I'm sure many of you have heard of before. So the length of the application process really depends on each student. We're hosting this webinar now because we know that many schools and colleges do ask final year students to finish the summer with a good draft of their personal statement and their university choices ready to go ahead of both deadlines. So the first deadline of the 15th of October is mostly for Oxford or Cambridge courses, veterinary, dentistry and medicine, and some science. And then the remaining and general deadline of the 15th of January is for the rest of the courses, university courses offered, and yeah, that's all to start the following September. So every year, many students do actually come to us at this stage in the process, ready to apply for next year, actually having not finalised their choices or their personal statement. And that's okay. And I think particularly at the moment, with students not having been in school for many months towards the end of the academic year, they've probably missed out on a lot of support that they might have got from school. But I can reassure you that with focused and maintained support and commitment, we have supported students starting from scratch at this stage, even ahead of the October deadline. I'm aware that many of you we've got parents on with us this evening, we've got students, you might be all at different stages in considering university. Some of you may only be kind of at GCSE or pre-GCSE stage, others might be applying for 2021. But I hope this will answer lots of your questions. We're aware also this year that some students might be making choices without having been able to visit many universities in person. And for those students, we encourage you to digest as much information as possible from virtual tours that lots of universities are offering and the wealth of information that's on their websites. If we could have the next slide, please, Ellen. So, to start with the basics of the UCAS form, it's very much personal details, funding and preferences. You need to include the schools that you've attended and any relevant qualifications, predicted grades, 5 university choices, and a reference, which is typically from a teacher if you're applying through school, and the personal statement. So most students will apply through UCAS through their school, and the school will have a dedicated person who'll be filling in their references, and the school will also submit your predicted grades. We work with lots of homeschooled students every year and students who may apply after finishing school. And you can apply, or some international students, you can apply as an individual, and predicted grades, if necessary, can be submitted, or you may be applying with grades that you already have, and you can submit the details of a referee who will fill that in for you. Then we have the personal statement. And for Oxford or Cambridge, you'll see throughout the presentation this evening, if anyone is considering Oxford or Cambridge, you'll see a similar picture and colour font like at the bottom of this slide for that additional information. So for Oxford or Cambridge, you'll be asked to apply to your chosen college at this stage, or submit what is called an open application. So about 40% of students don't choose a college, and if they don't, a college will be chosen for them by a computer program. Regardless of their college, all students on the same course attend the same lectures, seminars and practicals, and sit the same exams. If you do choose a college, you may receive an offer from a college that is different to the one that you stated as your preference, and this might be because the college has filled its places already or has a sufficient number of applications from your subject area. Oxford colleges are multidisciplinary, but not all courses are offered at each college. So it's really important, and I will be reiterating this throughout this evening, that students and parents do familiarise yourself exactly with the course page on each university website, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Back to colleges, that will be the main place of a student's academic work, accommodation and closest student community. So when choosing a college, we do advise trawling through the different prospectuses, attending open days or virtual tours if you can. Other things to think about are where that college accommodation is based. For example, would you rather be in the city centre or on the outskirts of the city? Would you perhaps prefer an all-girls or a mixed college? Would you like to belong to a fairly small college that's steeped in lots of tradition, or a larger and more modern college? And it is important to bear in mind that you can't request another college further down the line in the application process. If we could have the next slide, please, Ellen, and we will move on to the all-important selecting the right course. So there is obviously a range of courses out there that are a lot wider than what most students are used to when they're limited to their A-level choices or their IB choices. Sometimes the courses are a lot more interesting and more vocational than students may have ever thought is possible. So it's really important to not leave any stone unturned. But to start with, we suggest having a look at interests. Career aspirations, if they're known. For many students, they're not known before they start. More about that in a moment. Academic strengths, of course, and specific course content. As I just mentioned, it's really important that students are drilling down onto that course page and seeing exactly what modules they can take and what they include. To study a subject in depth for 3 years, it's vital that there's a good level of interest and passion for that subject. As I said, it doesn't matter if you don't know what you want to do with your degree, but it's unlikely that anyone will get there without being happy and passionate about what they're studying. It's really important that students take the time to read about every single module, as I've just mentioned, because courses for the same subject can vary widely across different universities. University websites are increasingly more open, and students are really able to drill down to the minute details of their course within a few clicks. So reading about a topic that interests them might also spark some interest for wider exploration at this stage that they maybe haven't come across in the A-level or IB syllabus, and it could promote some wider reading. Some of the Cambridge and Oxford courses, really importantly, and very easily arm students with some reading lists, suggested reading for lots of courses. So we really advise making the most of those. If I could have the next slide, please, Ellen. We'll then move on to selecting the right universities. So I'll just go through the list, which is obviously location, whether you'd prefer a more campus type university, league tables. We advise obviously taking all league tables with a pinch of salt, and we really do suggest drilling down into what specific course you're studying in terms of how each university ranks for what you'd like to read. There's also many student satisfaction surveys about well-being, and lectures and the quality of education that you receive there. And then it's obviously good to have a look at career or further study destinations, whether you're looking to go into a big corporate, secure a place on a good grad scheme, or perhaps move on to do a master's or even a PhD. So it's worth bearing in mind that for Oxford and Cambridge and many other competitive Russell Group universities, they are really searching for students with a thorough knowledge and a great passion for their subject. During their time at university, you'll be expected to enter into really rigorous debates with professors and peers, read an extensive amount of literature, and submit weekly essays. It's really crucial that research for the course is completed in great detail, and that they're confident that going to Oxford or Cambridge and that particular course is right for them. To help your child decide what degree would be best for them, our experienced and knowledgeable university admission consultants do provide insights into what they can expect from a specific course and its advantages and disadvantages for life after university. So we'll just move on to the next slide now. So we've chosen universities and we've chosen courses. We filled in all the admin details on UCAS. The next step is the personal statement. So some basics about the personal statement. We'll talk a little bit more in a moment about the content. This is often the first time that any students have written a statement like this in their lives, and it really does often take several drafts. There's not much room to work with. So it's 4,000 characters, which is 47 lines, about a page of A4. And the same personal statement is sent to all universities and courses. And achieving the required grades is a given. So when an admissions officer is reading your personal statement, they don't want to read about how you'll get 2 A's and an A star. They want to read more than that. So it's really important to go beyond school, beyond qualifications that you're going to get. For Oxford and Cambridge in particular, students are expected to show real academic passion and investigation that is beyond extracurricular activities or work experience or the curriculum that you're studying at the moment. So wider reading and academic exploration is really expected. More about how you can actually do this in a moment, once we've gone through the timeline. If we could have the next slide, please, Ellen. What's next? So next is, after you've submitted your UCAS application and your personal statement, is the interviews, entrance exams, and or assessments. Universities then usually reply with offers by the end of January. Students then need to choose and accept their first and second choice once they've heard from all their offers, and then of course need to achieve those grades. For Oxford or Cambridge or other universities that interview or require an entrance examination, and there are others, pre-interview assessments usually take place in October or November, and registration by the student is required. Schools can typically help with that, and interviews take place in December. If we could have the next slide, please, Ellen. So, as I promised, we are going to have a chat about the personal statement and what can give students the edge. So, the personal statement is your first opportunity in front of an admissions officer to stand out from other applicants. Students really need to be more than just their academic qualifications. Be clear and concise, and use our 4 keywords that we're always talking to students about, which is inspiration, exploration, investigation, and evidence. Everything that's stated in the personal statement needs to be backed up with an example. So some questions to think about are: why have you chosen the subject you'd like to study? Where did your interest begin? Was this sparked by a particular moment, event, or perhaps as part of your upbringing? What might you do with your degree? What extracurricular activities have you attended or are you involved with? Have these contributed to you as a person or your passion for your chosen subject, if they're related? Or what have you explored or taken part in to demonstrate a wider interest and passion? More about what these might be in a moment. How do your current academic subjects relate to your course? Is there a part of one of your particular subjects that really made you want to pursue it at degree level? Do you have any hobbies that relate to your course? Have you taken part in any work experience that relates to your course? And it's really important that every sentence is clear and concise. There really isn't room for waffle in 47 lines. And make sure that every statement you make is backed up with some evidence. Every line needs to be relevant to the course, you, and clearly show why the university should choose you over other candidates. So don't be too descriptive or include anything irrelevant or over-exaggerated, and most importantly, don't include anything that's untrue. If we could have the next slide, please, Ellen. So some examples of how to really capture that inspiration, exploration, investigation, and evidence comes in our examples of wider engagement that we've got here. So, as I mentioned, sometimes we work with students fairly last minute, and some of these things, such as the TED Talks, the podcasts, and the books, even more now, lectures and talks that can be accessed online, can be used in a personal statement, even if we were working towards the October deadline. So don't think that if you are towards the deadline that these don't necessarily apply to you. So some examples of wider engagement could include perhaps clubs or societies. So perhaps a student is a member of the debate club, any volunteering you may have done, essay competitions or challenges, for example, the maths challenge, lectures or talks, museums, exhibitions that provide that wider context. I really cannot stress enough how important it is, particularly for Oxford or Cambridge, and equally for other Russell groups, that students are writing beyond just about their A-level and IB curricula, and that they, do a sport. Universities are looking for students who have the ability to take a wider context to academia, who at least are reading some books outside of their set texts or their textbooks, and who have shown that they've had the research and the wherewithal to listen or take part or visit, and the academic interest that's really required to flourish at university. So if we could have the next slide, please, Ellen. I've just got an example here of a paragraph from a personal statement of how that wider inspiration, exploration, and investigation and evidence comes into play in a personal statement. We will share with you later in the chat function and as a follow-up a really helpful blog of ours on applying to university, which includes how to write a good personal statement. I'll just give everyone a couple of moments to read this here. You can see she's pulled together a book and a visit to the Welcome collection. If we could have the next slide, please, Ellen. So for any students who are taking an entrance examination as part of their application, don't discount the personal statement. I particularly speak to Oxbridge candidates every year who tell me that they've read on some uni student blog website or something, that the personal statement is such a small amount and it's always discounted by admissions officers. That's not true. And particularly in the current climate, it's really important not to discount the personal statement. For example, for 2021 entry, Oxford have cancelled the geography entrance examination and have said that students will be assessed by other factors. One of those factors will be the personal statement. Back to entrance examinations. They do vary between course, college, and university. So there are some big names that you may all be familiar with, such as the TSA, the Thinking Skills Assessment, the BMAT for biomedical admissions test, the LNAT, the National Admissions Test for law. But for somewhere like Cambridge and Oxford, there are specific tests for every single subject. Sometimes you will be assessed at interview, most of the time pre-interview, and some courses also require an example of written work to be submitted. Again, those steps should all be explained on the application page on the university course website for you. If we could just have the next slide, please, Ellen. Just a note about entrance examinations for Oxford or Cambridge. For most courses, the registration deadline is the same as the UCAS deadline. So remember to get yourself registered, speak to school if you're not sure how that might work. So the next step after entrance examinations, Ellen, if we could have the next slide, please, is the interview. So here is where, if you're applying to any universities that interview, here is where all that wider engagement that you've been doing, which has helped with your personal statement, is also going to help with your interview. So it's really important to remember the basics of obviously introducing yourself, being polite, trying not to be nervous, practicing those basics with either a tutor or a family member or friends can be really helpful. I know we all find role play quite excruciating, but we know that practicing those basics really helps. Also need to practice thinking and talking about various topics in your subject area and discussing unseen texts. So for somewhere like Oxford or Cambridge or other high-ranking universities that interview, the types of questions asked at interview can help students understand the level of academic interest that they're expected to demonstrate. For example, a question that has been asked in the past is, why do you think reindeer's eyes change colour with the seasons? Or what are the basic features of the following authors? A few practice sessions, with an expert interview preparation tutor, as I said, or friends or families can make a real difference. And use someone who maybe doesn't know your topic area very well, who can ask you somewhat random questions about your topics for you to really come into your own and practice thinking on your feet. Students are mainly judged on how well you're able to think about a problem and less about how much you know. So there's no need to make sure you know the A-level biology syllabus off by heart. It's thinking about the subject in a wider context, whether that's fact, possibilities, or interpretation, and how outstanding questions could be addressed. At Oxford or Cambridge, you may be offered to interview for multiple colleges, so do prepare to confidently meet a range of faces. If we could have the next slide, please, Ellen, thank you. So, to summarise, let's go through our checklist. So, students need to be more than their academic results, but of course, don't forget about getting the grades. So for somewhere like Oxford or Cambridge, or anywhere with entrance examinations and interviews, the process can seem quite mammoth, and that's because it is. So plan if you can and do your research so that all of this doesn't become too overwhelming, on top of already studying to do the best you can in your A-level or IB or other qualification. Keep track of registrations for assessments, interview dates and deadlines. We'd hate for anyone to miss out because of missing a date. And find out if, as a family, you're new to the school, perhaps if you're at an international school. If not, they have not many students who've gone to Russell Groups or Oxford or Cambridge. Find out what your school knows, speak to the head of sixth form or the head of higher education, talk to them about what their success rate is, and most importantly, how much help is actually available for you, so that if you feel like that support's not there, you can seek it out. If we could have the next slide, please, Ellen. That leads me nicely on to how we can help. Some of you may know a lot about us and have worked with us in the past, and some may be new to us this evening. We can help with tutoring for A-level or IB subjects and more other curricula as well. We can provide help with course choices and shortlisting, help with the UCAS application and the personal statement, preparation for entrance examinations, preparation for interviews. All of that is actually wrapped up in our university placement package, which we usually start with students at least 6 months in advance, but as I said, we have been known to help at much shorter notice. The whole package is usually £9,000, but we do work with each family and student on a completely bespoke basis. We have, for any students or parents who'd like some help very far in advance, or even if you're applying for the October or January deadline, created an offer for those of you who've joined the webinar this evening for a consultation with you and your child or student, and a bespoke action plan with resources, suggestions and advice for £300. That's usually £500 for families who need us. So that is everything in terms of the presentation that I have prepared for you this evening.